Hi, I'm Alyona Minkovski, and welcome to Salon Talks. President Trump is redefining what it means to be President of the United States, or at least what people want it to mean. This administration has forced many to question their own partisan identities, as well as the future of the American political system as we know it. David Frum, former speechwriter for George W. Bush and a senior editor at The Atlantic, is one of those people. And he joins me now to discuss his new book, Trumpocracy, The Corruption of the American Republic. So, David, thank you so much for being here.
Alyona, thank you.
It's a pleasure to have you. And, Donald Trump obviously didn't happen in a vacuum.
No.
And you very much write about that, too. You look at enablers, you look at appeasers. So to you, what are the biggest factors, especially in conservative politics, that contributed to Donald Trump becoming president?
Well, to understand Donald Trump, I think I begin by understanding that things like this are happening across the developed world. So we need an explanation that is not America-specific, because right now we have a Trump-like party. It's the second biggest party in the Netherlands. Germany has seen Trump-like parties come into the Bundestag. The first time parties like that have had any footing in German legislature since World War II. In France, the National Front, and you can go through it and see many Trump-like things in the vote that led Britain to leave the European Union. What is driving all of these things? My suggestion is that it's the stresses of the post-Cold War world and the irresponsibility of political elites in responding to those stresses. These have been times of economic growth for economies overall. A lot of people haven't participated in that growth. These have been times of tremendous mass movements of human beings. We've never seen migration as we have on the scale that we've seen it in the past 20 years. That creates a lot of social stresses. And meanwhile, everywhere political elites are drawing away from their societies, into that gap steps Donald Trump. Here in the United States, very specifically, we've seen the political game played more and more ruthlessly over the past 15 years. So a lot of the inhibitions and restraints that would have stopped someone like Donald Trump, they're broken.
But Donald Trump, what is uniquely American, rather than the other examples you cited too, is that he is this real estate mogul / reality TV
Yes.
star who very much knows how to manipulate, play to the media, and the media, I believe, played a very big role in forming the Republican Party, the political partisanship and hyper-partisanship that we see in this country right now, as is. I think Fox News played a great big role in that. And so what makes all of this significant if we look at specifically what's happening in America compared to the rest of the world?
I would say the person who runs the Trump-like party in Italy was a former comedian. So that didn't used to happen, because what used to happen was, like, these are lofty offices charged with national security. You can't just have any bozo. And that confidence, that demand is gone. But here in the United States, there has been this special problem, which is you've had this tremendous radicalization of the Republican Party in two ways. At the top, the wealthy people who write the checks that pay for the party, the congressional leadership, they are moving toward an ever more extreme philosophy of economic individualism. Huge tax cuts, rolling back entitlements and other protections. Meanwhile, the people who actually cast the votes that make the Republican Party go, they're under tremendous economic pressure. They are not college graduates. They are not winners from globalization. My joke is that the Republican rank and file was telling its leaders, we want more health care, less immigration, and no more Bushes. And they were offered instead less health care, more immigration, and one more Bush. And Trump exploited that and broke the party. He bent Fox News to his will. Fox is important, of course, but Fox began by trying to stop Donald Trump. In the end, he gained control over them.
But Fox, at least the way I see it, I think played a large role in this kind of post-truth society that we live in, right, when it comes to spinning the facts, approaching things from a specific angle, and telling a completely different story, to where people are siloed and live in a different bubble than someone else and their neighbor.
I write about this at the end of the book, and one of the reasons I think if we get through this in one piece, we don't get into a nuclear war in the Korean Peninsula, if the Republic survives, there's some signs of hope. And one of them comes from this thing you just pointed. You know, the phrase post-truth, when it originated as a compliment. It originated in the academy by academics who thought, truth, that's a concept from the Enlightenment. It's logocentric, it's phallocentric. We are so far beyond that. We don't have truths anymore. We don't have truth anymore. We have truths. And we don't have facts, we have narratives. You have your narrative, I have my narrative. Who's to judge? When Oprah Winfrey, in her speech at the Golden Globe, spoke of your truth, she was, I think, talking from that pre-2016 world. What we've discovered, thanks to Donald Trump, is that the alternative to the truth is not your truth. The alternative to the truth is lying, and democracies can't cope with it. And I am hoping, that your scorn for the idea of post-truth, I find a tremendously hopeful thing. That is, it's a sign that one of the things we're rediscovering is that truth is powerful, truth is precious, truth is real, and its alternative is lying.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think I'm not the one that needs convincing, right? the truth is important. It's the attempt to get everyone else on board. But when it comes to Donald Trump, too, and you say that he, in the book, you write that he essentially is going to actually strengthen if we see a lot of Republican defeat. We have midterm elections coming up this year, and that he will devour the party from within. Yes. Can you explain that more?
Well, to pass a tax cut takes the House, the Senate, and a president's signature. But to stop the other party from repealing a tax cut, you only need one of those three. So if the Republicans were to lose the House in November, if they were to lose the House and Senate, Donald Trump will at that point be their only lever on power. And remember, Donald Trump has no political beliefs exactly. He doesn't care about tax cuts versus tax increases. He's committed to nothing except himself, his self-enrichment, and protecting himself from the law. He's very capable of betraying any principle. So if you're a Republican trying to protect the tax cut that they just passed, they have to, he's once again in a hostage-taking situation with the Republican Party.
So you're a never-Trumper, but are you against any of the policies that this president has supported, any of the laws that this president has signed since being in office?
I don't use the phrase never Trumper, because actually when Donald Trump came on the scene, I described myself as Trump curious. That is, I knew who he was, and I had no use for him as a human being. And it seemed to me obviously not only ludicrous, but impossible that he could be president or the nominee of the Republican Party. But I thought he was shaking things up in a useful way. When he would say things like, we need to think more about the middle class, or that the opioid addiction epidemic is one of our top domestic problems, at a time when no other Republican candidate for president was saying those things. Yeah, he's opening up the windows and bringing in some fresh air. He's forcing the party to confront the Iraq trauma. He's lying about his own role, but that needs to be confronted. So those, I thought, so I didn't use that phrase, never Trumper.
What do you want to call yourself then, right? Because I do often see you referred to as a never Trumper.
Well, people can say whatever they like, so long as they say it with a smile.
I want to know how you identify.
I just sign my name. But when you say, are there things he's done that I approve of? Of course. The whole point to Donald Trump is that his policies are kind of random. On any given day, he's capable of doing anything. So I thought it was a good idea to move the embassy to Jerusalem. I'm generally in favor of stricter immigration enforcement and having lower numbers of immigration in the future. And I didn't like the individual side of the tax cut, but yeah, I think America should have a corporate tax rate in line with the rest of the developed world, where it's typically about 25%, not the 35% here. But none of that justifies Donald Trump. Because he's treacherous, and there's no way that any of these policies, if they come with him, bring you anything other than him. You may know the joke about the Plotkin diamond.
Go ahead.
So two women are at the beauty parlor or at lunch, and one notices the other's wearing an amazing, astonishing diamond ring, and she just can't help commenting on it. She says, "That's an incredible ring." And the wearer of the ring says, "You like this ring? This is a famous ring. This ring is the Plotkin diamond. It has been worn by queens, it has been worn by countesses, it's been painted. It's a ring full of legends, but the Plotkin diamond comes, like many famous stones, with a terrible, terrible curse. What is the curse? The curse is Mr. Plotkin." And I think that's the Trump story. Everything that you might be inclined to say, and other people might have other preferences, it comes attached to Donald Trump, and you get him. And he is wrecking the constitutional system of the United States, the alliance system of the United States. We are going to be very lucky to get through this with only limited damage. We will go through it, though, with a lot of damage.
But let's say if we removed Donald Trump entirely from the political system and the political sphere, we will still have corruption in our political system, and really an overwhelming amount of influence from money and from big industry. We'll still have an executive branch that has an excessive use of power. We will still have income inequality. We'll still have racism. We'll still have deep questions about immigration and division there. So why does Trump threaten the democracy so much? Or better yet, the question is, what actually needs to happen to save American democracy if it's not just about Trump?
Look, America does have is one of the more corrupt of the major democracies. That's always been true, especially at the state and local level. The federal government has tended to be cleaner than the state and local level. And in some ways that has been getting worse. We really don't, before 1972, we had no idea how presidential elections were financed. Congressional elections were even more of a opaque wall. It was legal to give campaign contributions in cash in this country until the middle 1970s. And they often were given in cash. And then no one had any idea what had happened. That system post-Watergate got cleaned up, became more transparent, but the transparency has been clouding since in the 21st century. We know less about 2008 than most elections before, less about 2012 than about 2008, and even less about 2016. But there's something different. Donald Trump is right now receiving income streams, possibly of millions and millions of dollars, from business partners in the Philippines, Turkey, United Arab Emirates, India. Those business partners are often subject to the authority, the power of pretty sinister governments. Like Donald Trump's Turkish business partners were literally arrested during the crackdown after the Turkish coup and then released. Why? Why were they arrested? Why were they released? Was that a form of influence on Donald Trump? His business partner in the Philippines is now the present Filipino ambassador to the United States. That's the guy who signs his checks. Normally, the Filipino ambassador to the United States, is worried about what the president thinks of him. Donald Trump has to be worried what the Filipino ambassador thinks, because that's the guy who's paying his rent checks or his licensing checks. Nothing like that has ever been seen before. We've never seen a president operate a business while president. We've seen presidential relatives and presidential children do kind of shady things. Franklin Delano Roosevelt's son, Franklin Jr., did some shady business practices. Jimmy Carter's brother, Billy, did some. But in the past, we're talking about relatively small amounts of money and usually
we haven't
easily
normally
caught.
seen an entire family try to enrich themselves while occupying the executive branch.
On the scale of tens, maybe hundreds of millions of dollars, possibly billions. Because as much as we have been learning about them, there is so much that we do not know.
So when we right now have a conversation about Donald Trump's fitness for office, his mental capacity, his physical health, that's been on TV all day. Do you feel like those are right questions to be asking?
I feel they're wrong questions. I think he's obviously pretty wily, and clearly not an athlete of any kind. But he's obviously physically functional, and I think that whole. I mean, look, everyone in Washington, I'm of course fascinated by the Wolf Book, but I think even to the extent that its revelations are true, they really point to the wrong questions. Look, this country is full of crazy, cranky old men. Usually the political system is designed to keep them from power. This one was elevated to power and is protected in power. On the day that Trump delivered one of his tirades against the Michael Wolff Book, he was at Camp David, and he spoke at the microphone, and he was flanked by people behind him nodding as he spoke. My book is not so much about him, it's about them.
What's it been like to be somebody within your circles and to be against the president? Have you had people turn their back on you, not want to speak with you anymore? What's that experience like?
There's an old joke that if you want a friend in Washington, get a dog. I have 2 dogs, so I'm fine. The Trump presidency has been in Washington we take our politics seriously, and it can sometimes get heated. But there are also relationships that are deeper than politics, sometimes of a pretty actually doubtful kind. You'll have people who are Democrats and Republicans, they then go into business together precisely because sometimes you want to hire a Democrat and sometimes you want to hire a Republican. And then after a while you think, these identities aren't loyalties, these are just marketing identities. But Trump has been different because many of the people who have most revolted against him have been people with long Republican credentials. And both those who support him and those who oppose him, each think the other is betraying ideals. So there are people who think Donald Trump is a Republican. He may not be a conservative, but he's doing conservative things. the left is against him, you are aiding and abetting the left, that's treason. And conversely, there are people who say, Donald Trump, I came into politics as a conservative because I believe in limited government or I want to stand up to America's enemies. Donald Trump is a person with no integrity. He's wrecking the government, and he's in cahoots in one way or another with America's enemies. You're the person who's betraying beliefs. And that's a very hard thing. You could resolve an argument where I say you're wrong, you say I'm wrong. I mean, we may not even ever be able to agree, but at least we can at some level say, well, let's just bracket that.
We can agree to disagree.
We can agree. You think, but if I think you have betrayed, I think we share something, and I think you've betrayed our shared identity. You say, no, you were the one who betrayed.
So you've lost some friends, is what you're trying to tell me.
We all have, but we all have. We've lost, but if that's the least of it, we're losing other things that are a lot more important.
Do you feel any responsibility? I mean, now you are obviously trying to sound the alarm about President Trump, the threat that he poses to our democracy, but you're also always going to be known as President Bush's speechwriter, coining the term axis of evil. Do you feel any responsibility for the lack of faith in our institutions, given the Bush administration, the damage that it caused?
Well, I've written a lot about the Bush administration. I mean, I'm someone who does always feel maybe a morbid sense of responsibility for things. But I think the Bush administration marked some important phases in the decline of the institutions. I don't think it started there. I really do think it started at the end of the Cold War. I think the Bush v. Gore decision was a milestone. And I think what happened during the Bush administration was, I talk about this, a lot of the norm breaking began in the way that in reaction to George Bush and in their anger against Bush v. Gore, Democrats began breaking some norms. For example, never before in the history of the United States had anybody ever filibustered an appellate judge, a federal appellate judge, before the Bush administration. That was new. That was a new move in the game, a more ruthless move. And that's part of the backstory to the Republic. What happens is each one of these new moves then allows people on the other side to justify their next move. So when the Republicans filibustered Merrick Garland and wouldn't even give him a hearing, that was also new, and that was payback for what the Democrats had done to the appellate judges, which in turn was payback for Bush v. Gore, which in turn was, and so it went in this spiral of vindictiveness. But
I guess when I think about lack of faith in institutions, the things, at least, and this is just me being personal, that come to mind for me are more in terms of the war in Iraq or warrantless, surveillance of American citizens, just finding out so many
but other people would think
powers that the government was taking that were really eroding constitutional rights.
But one of the things I think we have to do as we think about the Trump era is we say no one has to give up their politics in the Trump era. You don't have to give up yours. I don't have to give up mine. What you are called on to do, in my opinion, most urgently, is to understand the difference between political thinking and constitutional thinking and moral thinking. So I think the the Iraq War, not a success. The surveillance program, I think is a success, and I will defend it. And I think what's telling is that President Obama, when confronted, who had campaigned against it, when confronted on it, preserved most of it intact because it has caught a lot of bad actors. But that is not. But that what we're trying to do is preserve the possibility to have those disagreements. Where we are moving to, I fear, in the Trump era, is a world in which those constitutional limits are gone. And when you have a politicized Department of Justice, when the president claims the authority to make the FBI director his personal employee, you're moving from politics to constitutional crisis.
And if we just look at what's happening right now with the immigration debate, with DACA, the possibility of government shutdown, is that just business as usual? Or how do you think of this, at least this hurdle, is going to turn out?
Well, the government shutdown is a sign of just how broken the Republican Party is. Why are we on the verge of a government shutdown? Well, because there's everyone just understands there's a certain percentage of the Republican Party that will never vote for the financing, to raise the debt ceiling to allow the government to continue to operate. So we just start with that premise. You've got these 20, 25 people who will behave irrationally. And since that's a fact, and apparently nothing can be done about it, then the Republicans need Democratic votes to keep the government open, and then they have to bargain with the Democrats, and the Democrats get to exert a price. I mean, this is what is new about this is we've always had grandstanding over the debt ceiling. That what has always happened in the past, and President Obama, I think in 2004, Senator Obama, he was elected in 2004, so in his first year in the Senate, he gave a big speech denouncing raising the debt ceiling, totally playing to the galleries and behaving in an irresponsible way. But he did it knowing the votes were there. He didn't take any risks. It was rhetoric that was meant to be ignored, not creditable, but not harmful. What has happened in the Obama era is that people began using the debt ceiling as a real weapon of politics. That was new, and it happened again and again. And the United States twice, in 2011 and 2013, came within days of not being able to pay its bills, which would be an absolutely catastrophic event. And I mean, I think with a Republican president, the Republican Party will behave a little bit more responsibly, and some of these votes may be rounded up. I don't think there's going to be an immigration compromise. I don't think, because the way you make compromises is there's something you strongly believe in and want to do, and you accept the need sometimes to pay a price, even a price you don't really like, in order to get what you want to do. But if there's nothing you really want to do, if what you want is the crisis, then the crisis is very hard to avoid.
And who are you referring to, though? Who wants the crisis?
Trump has no immigration views.
I'm curious. Go ahead. Go ahead. Do you feel that his rhetoric on immigration, right, which very much has focused on a lot of racial animus, do you think that's not his? Those aren't his beliefs.
No, of course they're his beliefs. They're just not So I want to have more enforcement of immigration laws. I want to have fewer illegal immigrants, and I want.
You wrote about chain migration.
I've written about these things. So if you care about these things, you care about what will work. You know the wall is pointless. More than a quarter, nearly a third of the illegal immigrants in the United States arrived by airplane. They came on a visa, and they overstayed their visa, and they stayed in the country. So how is a wall going to do anything about that problem? People drop in and out of stat. The reason that if we had a system to check, if you come in on a visa, we know where you are. If your visa had a barcode and something, but Congress has never allowed that to happen. Illegal immigrants come to work. So we have the system where once you get past the wall, there's no real consequence for an employer if you hire an illegal immigrant. And employers do. If you were serious about it, you would say we have to have enforcement at the workplace. You would also think about legal immigration. The United States in 2016 took almost 2 million immigrants, the highest number in American history, tied with 1998. It's a lot of people. And Donald Trump, you might say, well, we might want to lower those numbers. That's going to take a law from Congress. What does Congress want? So you would be, if you were serious about it, you should be saying, okay, Democrats, you really want this DACA thing? Okay, we want some things.
Right, but can't Republicans offer their own suggestions? Right. I mean, ultimately, these are congressional battles and not all about Donald Trump.
But they don't have real views.
So they don't have solutions, and they don't have counter-arguments.
But they actually don't disagree with their Democratic counterparts that much. That's the thing that gives this immigration debate its shape, is the number of people who want actually to do what the president proposes or talks about is a minority. Most Republicans on the Hill like the immigration status quo, and President Trump likes the provocations. What he wants is people angry at him for being racist, because then the people who will rallies people to defend him. But if you start talking to him about the entry-exit visa system, his eyes are going to glaze over. He would regard you as the biggest bore in the world. So
what happens for Republicans from here on out? Is there any kind of salvation for them?
It's bad. They're going to take a bad beating in 2018. Donald Trump will become more important to them. He will look guiltier and guiltier as the Mueller investigation proceeds, if it's allowed to proceed. They will end up having to defend his wrongdoing. They will be bound ever more tightly to him as he becomes an ever more dangerous force, and the party is going to become ever more a Trump party. And when he finally exits the scene, if he exits the scene, the Republicans are going to carry that identification with them for a long time to come, and it's going to be a very hard thing to overcome. And meanwhile, if you want to worry about something, you have a Democratic Party that instead of saying, right, now it's our turn to be the grown-up party, actually is veering toward the left, and is veering toward, Bernie Sanders Elizabeth Warren, these are the faces of the Democratic Party of the future. People, the more Clinton Democrats, those people are hopelessly out of style. That's not where their party is.
I have to ask you one last thing. They're telling me to wrap, but I just have one more question too, because I remembered that you were part of this committee to investigate Russia. That launched, or at least your name was used in response to it. So I'm curious, because for me, when I saw the video that they put out, where you have Morgan Freeman in the first 5 seconds declaring, "We are at war," I thought it was irresponsible.
Friends of mine were involved in creating that committee, and I helped them with some of the publicity work. It's not my project.
All right. Well, how do you feel? I mean, in terms of how should we be talking about Russia in a way that is responsible, that acknowledges what happened in last year's election, but isn't hyperbolic and dangerous?
I would not use the language of war. And I think the thing to keep in mind in the U.S.-Russia relationship is how much more powerful the United States is than Russia today. Russia behaved in a very opportunistic way that they made a terribly, it was a reckless thing for them to do. They happened to win, but a price needs to be exacted. They had done this before to other allies. They continue to do it. But I would say, making American elections safer, that's not such a difficult project. Exacting a price from Russia in a way that changes Russia's external behavior and maybe ideally leads to a change in Russia's internal constitution, so it becomes something more like a normal European country. That should be our goal. It's tragic that I remember when the Soviet Union was overthrown, and it looked like Russia was on its way to becoming an EU member. I mean, that was the future that. When I think about what the foundation of my plan, that's my plan. I want to see an American-led, stable world order, trading freely, bound in institutions like the European Union, and not a world of conflict, a world where you get on the plane in London and fly visa-free to Moscow, do your business, and pick up your presents for your kids and head home.
I think we'd all like to see that. I wish we could keep going, but we are out of time. So, David, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure. Again, I'm Alyona Minkovski. This is David Frum. You've been watching Salon Talks. And tune into all of Salon's TV shows by liking Salon on Facebook and opting in for notifications, and then you'll get updates when we're live.